We begin today the Gemara on Daf Ayin Zayin Amud Beis, where it says Rab Shimon ben Gamliel Leimer, about 20 lines up from the bottom of the Amud. The Gemara here brought a braise that discusses a case where you have a meicher and a lekeach, a seller, a buyer, and the buyer only gives a down payment for the property that he buys. So the question is, what happens if either the buyer or the seller want to back out from the sale? So Rab Shimon ben Gamliel says about such a case that what we teach them to do is, if he's only giving a down payment, let them write a document that the entire property is sold to me, and it's as if I paid the entire thing, and the rest of the money that I didn't pay you yet is like a separate loan that I now owe you money, and I could pay you back like this separate loan whenever I can. But the sale is done and complete. When you write such a document, then nobody could be chayzer from the sale, from the entire karka, that the entire property that he bought. That's what Rabbi Shimon Gamliel explained. So here the Gemara is going to ask that there's a contradiction in what Rabbi Shimon Gamliel says. Shimon Gamliel, what we teach this buyer and seller when there's only a down payment being given, that they should not be able to retract from the sale. Ketzad, what do you have to do? You have to write a document. Ani, Pliny, Ben, Pliny, I, Pliny, Ben, Pliny, the seller, I'm selling fully, and the rest that you didn't pay is just like a separate loan. Says the Gemara, time of the cost of lehachi. What I see here from this brayse of Shimon Gamliel saying is that you only can't back out from the sale if you actually make such a document. But you did not write this. You didn't make it clear that now the money you owe is a separate loan. Then you did not acquire this property. You only gave a down payment, so you don't acquire the whole property. But the Gemara asks on this, what Rabbi Shimon Gamliel said somewhere else, Vatanya, but in a brayse we learned, and we had this earlier in the Masechta, what happens if the buyer doesn't have the full money to pay, so he gives a mashkin, he gives a collateral to the seller, and he tells the seller that I don't have the money now, but I want you to rely on me, that I'm going to pay you for this. So therefore I'm giving you this collateral, and I'm telling you as follows, if I will want to retract from the sale because I don't have money to pay, then arvaini machalach, this mashkin that I'm giving you will be yours to keep. And the buyer and the seller that it says, if I am going to want to back out from the sale, then I'm going to give you double of what this mashkin here is. I'll give you double in a property, even more than what I'm selling you for, more than what this mashkin is, double. So Niskaimu Atanoim, these conditions take effect. We accept what they're saying as something which is real, and they have an obligation to follow through with their words. Divrei Rabbi Yosi, that's what Rabbi Yosi says. Now the Gemara interjects here in the brayse to explain what's the basis of what Rabbi Yosi is saying here. Rabbi Yosi, what he says here in this brayse follows his reasoning that we had before already in the previous Pedic. The Omar, he says, Asmachta Kanya. When a person makes a condition like this, what's his main purpose that by saying this? He's not trying to give up this mashkin that he gave, and the seller is not interested in obligating himself to give double. He's only saying it so that the seller should rely on him, that I'm serious about paying. And if he doesn't end up paying, he doesn't really want, you would say, he's not really interested in giving up this mashkin. But nevertheless, according to Rabbi Yosi, even though you only said it as an asmachta, you said it just because you want the person to rely on you that you can actually pay, but nevertheless, what you said is accepted, and it takes effect that if you don't actually pay, then your mashkin will be acquired to him, even though it's said as an asmachta, but nevertheless, kanya, it takes effect. That's Rabbi Yosi's opinion. Rabbi Yehuda says that when you say this, it does not take effect that now it's going to be a kinyan for the entire property. The words that you said that the wholesale should take effect, and if not, then you can keep my mashkin, it doesn't take effect as a kinyan for the entire property. You gave a mashkin that has a certain value of a certain percent of this property that you bought. Whatever the value of that mashkin is, that's what the seller has in his hands. And therefore, that's only for that amount as the kinyan takes effect, not for more. Why? Because Rabbi Yehuda basically holds asmachta loy kanya. You can start saying conditions and promising him that I'm going to give, and therefore, all of that doesn't help. It's just that whatever the value of the mashkin is. And on this, Rabbi Shimon Gamliel says, Bamed dvarim amurim. When do I say that the kinyan only takes effect in the value of the mashkin that you gave? if you told him that my mashkin should acquire this property. Aval machaloi sade be'elev zuz. But what happens if he sells him a property that's worth 1,000 zuz? V'nasalei mehem chamish mei zuz. He didn't give him a mashkin. He gave him part of the payment. He gave him half of the payment. So then the halacha is kana o machsaloi isashar. He acquires the entire property, and then the money that he owes him for the rest. So then it's like a loan that he owes him that he can give it them back at any later time. But he acquires right away the entire property. So, because he gave him already an actual payment, he's not just giving him a mashkin. If once you give a down payment, the beginning of a payment, in this case he gave 50%, the rest that he didn't give yet just becomes a loan, and the kinyan on the entire property takes effect. So you see here clearly, Rav Shimon Gamliel says that when you give a down payment, then the entire property is acquired to you. Even if you don't write a particular, like he said before, you have to write a document to make it clear that the rest is going to be just a loan. Here he says that automatically, just you paid half, the rest is going to be like a loan. So contradicting to what Rav Shimon Gamliel said before. Machzos Hashem means that you pay the rest. You pay the rest like a loan. Whenever I feel alacha kamashanim, even after many years. So the Gemara answers, it depends. We have to assess what the seller's das over here is. What is the seller thinking here? And it depends. We see from his behavior. Like Hashi, it's not a contradiction. Over here, if you see that this seller is coming in and out, asking you constantly, no, where's the rest of the money? Where's the rest of the money that you owe me? So what do you see? He's not interested in selling you this property if you're not going to pay him in full. So therefore, Rav Shimon Gamliel says, in that case, if you're not going to have the seller write a very clear document for you that the sale is in effect and the rest is a loan, then we're going to say, based on his behavior, we see that if you're not paying him in full, he doesn't want the sale of the whole property to go through because he wants the money. And but if it's a case where you see that the seller is not coming in and out asking for the money, he sold it, then he's already okay with the whole sale, and so it's clear by his behavior that he's okay with the sale being in effect just with the down payment, and the rest of the money will just be a loan that you'll pay him at a later point. So it's all you can see based on the behavior of the seller whether his das is whether he agreed that the whole sale should be in effect or not. Gemara brings a source for this where we find that Rava said, if you sell something to your friend, this could be karka like we're talking about, or even any movable item, and he's coming in and out and he wants the money. So then loikani, you're not going to be kind if you didn't pay in full for it. If he's not coming in and out for the money, then kani, you're going to be kind even if you did not pay in full. So Taisvis, some of the Rishonim say that this is even when you already made a kinyan here. You made a kinyan of chazaka on the field, or you made a kinyan of meshicha. But if you see he's coming in and out for the money, he didn't ever agree to the sale, that it should take effect without you paying in full. Even though the payment is not the actual kinyan, the kinyan is chazaka or meshicha. But if he's coming in and out for the money, then we know he did not want the kinyan to be in effect at all with these conditions. Similar thing, V'amar Rav. Again, what?
Should only make the
maybe. Okay. That's if he wants to. Yeah. That's for we're saying for this from the seller's perspective. If he wants to make sure he gets his money. Now, based on what we brought before in the Braise, Rava learns out another halacha. Rava said, a person lends $100 to his friend. Upare zuze. He pays you back the loan, but he pays you back $1 at a time. It's a payment. I paid you back $100. In the end, it's $100. You paid him back. Elo the isle tarum iskabei. But the lender could have complaints to the borrower. The Amalei tells him, you caused me a loss of $100. If you pay me back $100 at once, so then I have $100. I'll put it away. But if you give me $1 at a time, and I spent $1, then I spent another $1, so then it's not a proper payment. Yes, Rav is saying this based on what we saw before in the Braise, that you pay for a sale, and then the rest can be a loan, and you can pay it at a later time. So you see that it doesn't have to all be paid at once. The same thing is with any loan. But this is all though if you're paying before the due date of the loan. When it comes the date to pay, you can't tell him, I'm going to pay you $1 at a time. And then you have to pay him the whole thing. But if he was paying him before the due date, and he was paying him every day, he paid him another $1, like he's giving him tzedakah every day. So So then he paid him everything by the time the due date came, but he can have tinus to him that I lost my money like this. Going back to the question of whether when you didn't pay fully for a sale, does the sale is the sale in effect or not? So there was a story with a person, the Zavan Lei Chamara Lachavre. He sold a donkey to his friend. Usually in Gemara, Chamra means wine, but over here Rashi clarifies, Chamara means a donkey. Upashle Chad Zuzah. And he paid him for the donkey in full besides one zuz, $1, let's say. And the seller is coming in and out. Where's my money? Where's the dollar? Where's the dollar? So before we said the rule, if he's still coming in and looking for his money, he's revealing his intent that he doesn't want the sale to be in effect until he gets his money. But over here, in this case, it was just $1. Yosef Ravashi v'kamayim, but Ravashi was being ma'ayin in this case. Kahai gavna mayim. What's the halach here in this case? Kani, did he acquire it because he paid everything besides $1? I like Kani. Or no, he did not acquire it because we see that the seller is still coming looking for his money. So Avimi from Agranya said in the name of Rave, Zuzah, if it's just $1 that you didn't pay yet, Kizuzi Dami. It's like you didn't pay more, that you a certain percent you didn't pay. Just like we said regarding Zuzi, if he's coming looking for his money, the sale is not in effect. The same if it's just $1, the sale will not be in effect. Veloy Kani, you're not Kani yet. So he asked him on this psak din here that there's a contradiction what Rava said. Because elsewhere it was said in the name of Rava, Kani, that if he's looking for his money, you are going to be kaina. So the only way to explain this is that probably Rava meant to say that if it's just $1 that he's looking for, so then that $1 he doesn't mean to hold up the sale because of $1. And here we're saying that Rava said even just $1, one zuz. If he's looking for his money and you're not paying it, he means to hold up the sale because of that $1. So he answered him to targum shmaitech. This halacha that you heard from Rava, that it's going to be kaina to targum shmaitech b'moiches adei mipnei roasa. When a person is selling the property and it's a very bad quality of property, so we know for a fact that if not for the fact that he needed the money, he wouldn't be selling this. So the reason why he's coming to get his money is not because he's trying to show the buyer that if you're not going to pay me, I'm not interested in selling this. On the contrary, this is a bad quality property, and he wants to make sure that the sale stays in effect, that the buyer shouldn't back out. Like, give me my very last $1 that you owe me, and I want to make sure to get rid of this property. So Adarabe, sometimes when you see that it's such a case, a bad quality property, he's looking for his money to make sure that the sale should be in effect. So it's all, again, the point here is you have to know how to assess the behavior of the seller to see whether he's interested in the sale and being in effect or not, even before all the money is paid. In this case, it's clear that he does want the sale to be in effect.
It's easy if he's just moichel on the dollar, and then that's it.
Okay. Okay. Sagt the Gemara, Pshita, in the following case, the halacha would be simple, and that is, if Boyel is vuni b'meya, a person wanted to sell a property for $100, because he needed $100. So he's looking to sell a small property for $100. V'loy ashkach. And he didn't find anybody that's ready to buy such a small property. So what does he do instead? V'zavim b'masayim. So he sells a larger property, double the size, for $200, and that he found a buyer for. And now, v'ka'al v'nofika zuzi. And this person is coming in and out, he's asking for his money. So what the fact that he's coming in and out and asking for his money, what is that an indication of? So in this case, it's clear that loy kani, that the sale will not be effect, because the fact that he's coming in and out for his money is because now that he had to sell a property for $200, he wants to get all that money because he really only needs $100. So what is he going to do with the extra $100 that he's making off the sale? He's going to buy another property for $100. And then he'll have the $100 cash that he needed. But in this situation, our assessment is that he's interested in getting his money because he wants to buy another property over here. So therefore, until he gets his money, it's not going to be kaina. And so this case is clear. What's if the case is that the person was looking to sell the property for $100? And he didn't find a buyer for $100. But if he would have worked a little harder, he would have left this property on the market and he would have looked for a good buyer. So he could have found someone to buy it for $100. But he didn't go out of his way to find someone to buy it for $100. And instead he sells a larger property for $200. and v'ka'ayel v'nofik azuzi, and he's coming in and out. He's looking for his money. So how do we assess this situation? Do we say that this is like a person that's selling the property that he's not interested in? We see that over here that he could have been matriach to go and find a buyer, but he wasn't matriach to find a buyer. So he went to sell this property without being matriach to sell that property for $100. So what does that mean? That the property is not so important to him. So therefore he's ready to sell it. And he's coming in for the money because he wants to get his money to get rid of this property. That's what's going on over here. Or maybe, no, we don't say that. Or maybe over here we say in this case that he's selling it and he doesn't want the sale to take effect unless he gets the last dollar for this property that he's selling over here. It's like a person that's coming in and out for his money. He wants to get his money, and if he doesn't get his money, he doesn't want the sale to be in effect. Okay, so in this case the Gemara says Teiko. It remains unresolved. Now the Gemara goes back to the case of the Mishnah, where the Mishnah was discussing a case where a worker backed out in the middle of the job, and the situation was that it was a job which was a davar ovid. Because he backs out, the employer loses out over here. Let's say you needed someone to deliver him. He's a musician for a wedding, and because he's backing out in the middle, so he doesn't have a musician for the chasana. Such a case. Other examples are brought over there. So what did it say? So Sachar as a chamor v'sakadar, or if it was a donkey driver that's going to deliver him the musical instruments. That was one example. Or v'sakadar v'cholo, or a potter that's delivering him things. And he backed out. Soicher aleyen. So the employer could now hire someone else on their account. He can deduct from their pay, from the first workers that he owes money to, take away from their pay to be able to hire someone else. Oy maton, or he could deceive the first workers. Okay, so regarding deceiving, we had already before in the Gemara what that means, but here the Gemara explains the seicher alein. At kama seicher alein. For how much value could you go and hire other workers on the account of the pay of the first workers that you take away from them? How much could you take away from the first workers? Amar Rav Nachman says, at kedei schara. Their entire pay for the portion of the job that they did do, if the first workers already did a certain portion of the job, and you owe them a certain amount of money, you can hire now other workers, and if you have to pay more money for these other workers, you can take off from the entire pay that you owe them for the portion of the job that they did. Rav asked Rav Nachman on this. In the Braisa it says, we had it before, you can hire another worker and deduct it or take away from the first workers up to the amount of 40 or 50 zuz, which sounds like much more than even the portion of the work that they did, the money that you owe them. So what is this based on? How can you take away so much money from them? And this is another pshat of here. It's different than what Rav Nachman said. So Rav Nachman explained, Kitanya when it says there in that Braisa that you can deduct and take away from the first workers such a high amount of money, if there was a bundle that came to the hands of the employer, meaning if these are, let's say, construction workers, and they came to your location, to your house to do the job, and they brought on the construction site their toolkit with all of their tools into your house, and then in the middle of the construction job they back out. Now you can hire other people to do the work, not only to take away from their pay that you owe them, but even also the value of all the tools that they brought here. You can use the value of that, sell it, and take the money to pay the other workers that you have. This is the understanding over here when you hire a worker, that when he's bringing the construction tools into your site, into your house, that he's bringing it on the condition that if he's going to back out, I have it here as a mashkin, and I can use it to go and sell it, to be able to pay other workers if I'll have to, if you back out. That's the case. But if there was no bundle, though, that he brought into the house, and then there was no such understanding, there was no such condition, so then you could only take and deduct from the pay of the work that they did to pay other workers. That's the difference between what it says in the Braisa and what Rav Nachman said.
40-50 is a good.
Yes, so 40-50 is an example, but yeah, it's what we're saying is over here, these kalim could be worth a lot of money. These tools could be worth much more than the portion of the work than they did. So even up to this kind of amount of money, you can take it and sell it and to pay other workers. A person rented a donkey, and there was a clear agreement that you told the masker that, or the masker told you that this is a donkey that you're taking to go up a mountain. But instead, you took this donkey and went down into a valley. Or bebika, you rented it to take into a valley, bahar. And instead you took it into a mountain. So then I feel a zu es a million, even if it's the same distance, but it's a different place. This is a mountain or in a valley, it's a different environment. Umesa, and therefore the donkey dies, chayiv. You're going to be responsible for the death of this donkey. It's your negligence that you took it to a place that was not what was made up. Then the Mishnah here says, now here the Mishnah is going to repeat the same kind of, it seems like the same kind of a case where the person changed from the location where he was supposed to take it. But here the Mishnah makes all kinds of distinctions. So a person that rented a donkey to take it on the mountain, and instead, he took it into the valley, so now, and then it died. So it depends what was the cause of the death. If it slipped when it was in the valley, so then you're going to be potter for this. Because if it slipped going in the valley, you told this masker, the one that you rented it from, that you're taking it up to the mountain. And going up a steep slope that is on the mountain, for sure it would slip. But the renter, the one that rented it, you told you, no, this is a strong donkey, you can take it up the mountain. So if then you took it into the valley, it slipped, that's not your negligence. So then you're going to be potter for this. If though when you took it into the valley, the heat in the valley, there's less air there, there's more heat than the going up on a mountain, and then it died from a heat stroke going into the valley, chayiv, then you're going to be responsible because you put it in an environment that caused the death. Similar, if it's leilicha bebika, you took this donkey to take it down into the valley, valicha bahar, and you took it up into a mountain. If it slipped on going up the steep slope up going up a mountain, then chayiv. It's your responsibility because you made up with him. You're taking it into the valley where you don't have this kind of steep slope. Going up the mountain, though, it's you brought it into a place that caused something to happen to it that it died. However, if going up the mountain, the animal, it was too hot for it, or the weather it was too hot for it, then you're going to be potter. Because if it was hot going up the mountain, it's even hotter in the valley. So it's not your fault that it died over here. It would have died even if you taken it into the place of the valley where the owner told you to take it. But if you see that it got overheated, not just because of the weather, but because it actually was going up the steep slope and therefore it was sweating and it got heated up by going up the mountain, then chayiv, then you are going to be responsible for this because this wouldn't have happened if you would have taken it in the valley. A person rents a donkey vehevrika. Vehevrika, according to one pshat in the Gemara, means that it became partially blind. So it's still a donkey that you could use to some extent, but now you're going to have to work harder on when you're riding this donkey to make sure that it doesn't go off the path. But it's still usable. Or this donkey gets confiscated by the government on the way. The people of the government, if they would have to go from one place to another or carry things from one place to another. So the officials, the police, or whatever it was, they would confiscate someone's donkey and take it to use it temporarily, and then they would give it back to you. Okay, we'll see actually a machlekes about this in the Gemara, but that's the idea of the angaria. So then, oy meloi. The owner that rented it says to the renter, Harei shalach lefanecha. It is what it is. This is your mazel that it happened over here, and I'm not going to deduct anything from the payment of the rent. Actually, that's actually a machlekes rishonim, whether you deduct from the payment of the rent. But the point of here is that the owner does not have to replace for him another donkey because it's still usable to some extent. And even the angaria is also something that is not a total loss, and therefore this is your rental, and whatever happened over here to it is your bad mazel, as I mentioned. But there is though a machlekes rishonim whether the renter is going to have to pay fully now for this because he can't use it fully the way it was originally. However, if mesa or nishbera, if the donkey that he rented just dropped dead or it broke as he's using it, and now he can't use it at all, then chayiv lamed lechamar. So now you rented him a chamar, and now the chamar is not here anymore. You're going to have to give him a new chamar. The Gemara is also going to discuss the details about this, but here in the Mishnah, Rashi says what this means is that the owner is going to have to take this dead carcass of the donkey, sell it, and then take that money, and then add whatever money necessary to provide you a new donkey. This is in a case where there's nothing you can do with the donkey anymore. Over here, he's going to have to provide him a new donkey. Okay, so now the Gemara starts with the beginning of the Mishnah. What is the difference here in our Mishnah? The Reisha, says that if you take a donkey and the deal was you're taking it up the mountain and instead you took it into the valley or the opposite. So over there it says that it's going to be your responsibility for changing the location. And Maishna Sefer, the Kamaflik, but then in the Sefer of the Mishnah, it gives you all kinds of distinctions. It depends how it died. It depends if taking it into the valley made the situation worse, or taking it into the mountain made the situation worse. Why in the Sefer does it make distinctions? So by Rabbi Yanai, they explain as follows. Reisha, Shemesa Machmas Aver. In the Reisha, it just died from the ear. It didn't die from whether the slope, the steepness of the hill, or a heat stroke. It's just from the aver, from the ear that's there. So in such a case, we don't see any very specific cause of death that's coming uniquely from what's in the mountain or what's in the valley, just the ear that it died there. So over here we say that this donkey is sensitive. If the owner told you take it to the valley and you took it to the mountain, it's a different kind of ear there, and therefore you took it to a place that the ear killed it. So therefore it's going to be your responsibility that you took it to a place that it wasn't used to this kind of ear, and that's why the owner warned you, don't take it. He made up, take it to another kind of place. Over here there's no distinctions of any other causes of death to look into. That's the case over here when it died mitzad avir. Another pshat the Gemara says, Rabbi Yossi bar Chanina Amar, Rabbi Yossi bar Chanina says, Kagoy shemeisa machmas uftzena. The Reisha of the Mishnah is talking about a case where the animal died from exhaustion. So if it died from exhaustion, so in such a case, also it doesn't make a difference that you don't have to look at the details of whether it slipped or no, it didn't slip. Or it didn't die from a heat stroke, it died from the exhaustion. So therefore over here, if you took it to a place where the animal is not used to going to, and the owner told you this is an animal that usually goes to on a mountain or an animal that usually is in the bikka, so it got exhausted because it wasn't used to this kind of environment. Going up the mountain, it got exhausted, or being in the valley where it needs more air and it doesn't have air to refresh itself, so it got exhausted. So over here, if we see it's the exhaustion, so either way, you're going to be chayiv by changing the location where the owner told you to take it. Another pshat, Rabba says, Kagoyin she'ikisha nochash. What happened there is that you took it to a place that then a snake bit it. And so in such a case, you're going to be responsible either way. It doesn't make it over here. There's nothing to look at whether it slipped or not. Over here, what happened is a snake bit it. So if a snake bit it over here, you're going to be responsible for taking it into a valley. The owner tells you take it to a mountain, and then you take it into the valley, and now there's a snake there, or the opposite as well. So then that's going to be your responsibility. Here, there's a discussion about this in the Rishayim here. Some say that this Taisus here discusses this Indian also. Similar also regarding the previous case, Uftzana, that this could be considered a case of Tchilase B'Pshiyeh V'Seife B'Ainis. That when a snake comes and bites the donkey, when that happens, it's considered to be an inus. But you took it to a place that you weren't supposed to, so you were negligent at taking it to this place. And then that negligence later causes this inus, that this is a place that has snakes in it and it bites it, so you're going to be responsible for it. Another pshat the Gemara says regarding the Reisha of the Mishnah, why aren't we making any distinctions of the cause of death? Rabchia bar Abba Omer Rab Yechanan, he said in the name of Rab Yechanan another pshat that there's taka machlokes here. The Reisha and the Seifa are two different opinions. Hamani Rab Meir, the Reisha of the Mishnah is Rab Meir. The Omer Rab Meir says, Kol Amaver Al Dasha B'Al Abayis. Anybody that does not do like what the owner that rented it to you made up with you, Nikra Gazlan. So you're called a Gazlan by changing what he told you. Once you're a Gazlan is responsible for any inus. In the Seif of the Mishnah, it's not following Rab Meir's opinion. You don't have to, even if you don't follow exactly what the Balabas told you, you're not called a Gazlan. So there we have to look at whether it's your negligence or not. But the Reish of the Mishnah says, according to Rab Meir, if you didn't listen exactly to what the Balabas tells you, you're a Gazlan. So you're chayiv for every inus. So here the Gemara is going to go through a discussion. Where did Rab Meir say this? Hi, Rab Meir, where do we find that Rab Meir says that if you change from the conditions of what the owner told you when he gave you or rented you something, that you become a Gazlan? So, Ilaim Rab Meir, the Tzaba, would you say? Huh? Now, in the Sefer, we're saying that it depends if you were negligent or not. Over there, the Mishnah is making a distinction. By a Gazlan, you don't look at whether you're negligent or not. A Gazlan is chayiv for every inus. That's why in the Reisha, it doesn't make any of those distinctions. So now if you're going to say that it's Rab Meir the Tzaba, Rab Meir that discussed the case of a person that got a worker, that he takes wool and he dyes it. and he didn't dye it the color that the balabas asked for him. As we see, the Mishnah says, the Mishnah in Bava Metzia, it says, you give wool to a dyer, that he should dye it red, and instead, he dyed it black. Or shacher is supposed to dye it black, but he dyes it red. Rab Meir says, you have to give back to the owner the money of the value of this white wool that he gave you in the beginning. Now, what's the basis of Rab Meir's opinion? The moment you change from what the balabas told you, you're a gazlan. And what happens by a gazlan? You have to give back the item that you stole in the condition that it was in at the time when you stole it. And therefore, you have to give back the value of that white wool. Now, then the dye, the red, the black, so then that you kind of the actual wool itself that you have in your possession with a shinui. That's the halacha, as we learned in Bava Metzia, that once you make a shinui in it, so then you kind it. So the wool itself you keep, but you have to give him back the money of the value of the wool itself that you stole here. So here you see clearly Rab Meir is saying, the moment you change from the color that the balabas asked you to do, you become a gazlan. Rabbi Yehuda argues, and we had this before in the Gemara said that the Stam Mishnah at the beginning of this Perek is Rabbi Yehuda. He says that no, you're not a gazlan. Your intention wasn't to steal. You can't consider him a gazlan. He didn't do the color the balabas told him. He didn't dye it the right color. Okay, but so now what's the halacha? So ima shvach yasal yitziyah, nice and yasal yitziyah. So there's two things you could look at over here for him to get paid for what he did. We're not going to pay him fully for the job that he did like a regular worker that does a job because you didn't do what the balabas told you. So now there's two things. There's either the expenses that you spent on the money, the worth of the dye, the spice, whatever, some money that you need for this dye. And then there's the actual shvach. How much was this wool here improved by the color that it was dyed now? So that's whatever is less. That's what the owner has to pay him. So if the shvach is more than the yitziyah, more than the expenses, so then nice yitziyah. So then he tells them, look, I'm only paying you for the expenses that you spent here, because this is not what I wanted. If the expenses are more value than the actual improvement of this wool itself, then nice shvach, he only gives him the value of what it was improved. So this is the halacha of a worker that doesn't follow orders, but he's not considered to be a gazlan. Okay, so now the Gemara wants to say this is the source of where we see that Rab Meir says that if you don't follow exactly what the balabas told you, you become a gazlan. Same thing in our Mishnah. You took the chamayr and you took it on the mountain, not exactly the place where the balabas told you, into the valley. Right away you become a gazlan, and therefore you chayav for any einus that happens. But the Gemara says this is not necessarily a source for our case. How do you know to compare it? Dilme, Shani Hossam, maybe there it's different. The Kanya B'Shinui Maisa. Over there, he actually took this item itself as it was, and he changed it from what it is. He went, person gives you a white wool, and you're supposed to dye it red, and this very item itself, he dyes black. Over there, you're a gazlan. It's a Shinui Maisa, and you're kind of it itself, and then you have to pay back the value for what it was. But over here, though, he's not, there's no Shinui Maisa that he's touching or doing anything to the very chamayr itself. He's taking it to another kind of location that he wasn't supposed to take it. So over here, who says Rab Meir would say that you would be kainit or you become a gazlan for this? Ella says the Gemara Rab Meir. Maybe the source for what we're saying here, that if you change from what the balabas told you, you become right away a gazlan, is another thing Rab Meir said. The migbas purim, when it comes to fundraising money that people are donating money for the sake of purim. The Tanya, as we learned in the Braisa, magbis purim lepurim. The money that's collected for the sake of the poor people, for the suda that they need on purim, should be kept and should be used only for that sake, for purim. Magbis ha'ir la'isa. Now, also this money that's being collected for purim, for people of this city, should be used for people for this city, not for people other places. That now, when you use this money for the Sudas of Purim on that day, you're not very precise about this matter to only give from this fund now that was collected for Purim, to give only exactly what they need for the Suda. Aval, rather what you do is, like golim, you buy calves, and you shecht it, and you make sure that there's a lot and abundance for the poor people to eat from this money that you collected on Purim. Then if there's still extra money, the rest should go into the general fund of tzedakah for the poor people. That's a Tanakama. Rabbi Eliezer says, Magbis Purim lepurim, the money you collected for Purim should be used only for Purim. Not only is it a gabay of tzedakah that shouldn't just take this money that was collected for Purim and just put it into a general fund for other things in the beginning, but even the poor person himself that gets this money, for the Suda of Purim, he is only allowed to use it for the Suda of Purim. He's not allowed to use it for anything else. He's not even allowed to buy a lace for his shoes. Elam kain hisna b'maymed an she'ir. Unless there was a condition, a clear condition made in the presence of the people of the city, that the poor people can take this money that was given to them for the Suda of Purim, that they can use it for something else. Divrei Rab Yaakov mishum Rab Meir. This is Rab Yaakov's opinion in the name of Rab Meir. So here you see that Rab Meir is saying, poor people get money that's being collected for Purim, so it's being given to them only for the Suda of Purim. They're not allowed to use it for anything else unless a clear condition is made. You can't switch from what the Balabas gave it to you for. Rav Shimon Gamliel Mekel. Rav Shimon Gamliel was lenient about both of these points here. The Gabbai Tzedakah can use this money for other things. The poor people that get the money can use it for other needs as well. So here, this is the source where Rav Meir says you get money for a certain purpose, you can only use it for the Suda of Purim, not for anything else. Same thing, you get a donkey, you're renting a donkey, you could only use it exactly the way the Balabas told you, not for anything else. Otherwise, you're a Gazlan. But again, the Gemara says maybe it's not the same thing. Dilma, maybe Hossam Nami over there, that died to the Purim Udu Yavle. The person giving the money for Purim, he wants to be in kind of mitzvah of Matanas Lav Yainim, it should be for the Suda of Purim. So he's only giving it for that reason. Adai to the Midachrini, Lo Yavle. For anything else, he's not giving it. Over here, though, when you're renting it to this person and you tell him, take it to the mountain, over here, not necessarily was that condition so specific and strict that if you take it somewhere else, you should be considered to be a Gazlan. So we can't bring a source from there either. Ella says the Gemara, Rab Meir. Maybe over here, the source is from what Rab Meir said in another place, also about tzedakah. The Tanya, Rav Shimon ben Elazar, and Rav Shimon ben Elazar says, Yishom Rab Meir, in the name of Rab Meir, Hanaisim din alani, a person gives a dinner tzedakah to a poor person, and likach lechalok, he gave it to him, you should buy a chalok, you should buy a shirt. Laikich by talis, he shouldn't instead buy another piece of clothing, a cloak. Or talis, he gave him the money to buy a talis, laikich by chalok, you shouldn't buy a shirt. Why? Because you got the money for one purpose, you can't use the money for a different purpose. So over here you see again this point, by tzedakah, you get the money to buy one item, so then you're not allowed to buy from it something else. Okay, now here though, I think Taisvis it is that explains, the Gemara seemingly could have gave the same answer, like it said before, Benegeh to put him, that you got the money for one purpose, you're not allowed to switch it. He made it clear, I'm donating, I'm giving you this money for just this purpose. But it's not the same like by Purim. That's a svar the Gemara says only by Purim, because when a person gives the money on Purim, Matanas Lav Yainim, so over there you want him to use it for the Suda of Purim. Otherwise, I'm not giving you money. Over here, you're supporting a poor person. You're telling him buy a shirt, and he switches it to buy a talis. You can't say that same svara like you say by the Suda of Purim, that he didn't want him to use it for anything else. But nevertheless, here Rab Meir says, you have to follow the orders that the Balabas told you. So we could say the same thing by the donkey. This is the source that Rab Meir doesn't allow you to switch what the Balabas told you. But the Gemara again says, no, this is not a source either, because we could say, V'dil mishani hasam da'asel l'michshadei. Over there, the reason why we don't want the poor person to switch and use the money for something else, because then people are going to suspect the person that donated the money. What is it? What are they going to suspect him? People are going to say, oh, ma planya, this person made a pledge. And he said, Zavnina le'levusha le'pleni I'm going to buy, I pledge, I'm going to buy clothing for this poor person. And now, and people are now going to, this poor person takes the money, doesn't buy himself clothing, buys himself something else. People are going to think that this person that made his pledge didn't follow through with his pledge. Or he said he made a pledge he's going to buy him a glima, a shirt, and he didn't buy him a shirt because look, he still doesn't have a shirt because the poor person went and used the money for something else. So maybe there the only reason you're not allowed to switch from what the person told you is because it's by tzedakah. You don't want the person that made the pledge to be suspected that he didn't follow through with his pledge. But the Gemara says, if that would be the pshat there, im ken lisni mipnei chashad. So why doesn't the Braisa say, don't switch from what you're supposed to do with the money because that the donator shouldn't be suspected? That's what it should have said. The Braisa clearly said the reason of Rav Meir is because he's switching from what the Balabas told you. So you see clearly over here that it's because he switched from what the owner told you. Nikra Gazlan. If you get money, you get a rental, whatever it is, and you got it with certain conditions, and you switch from what you were told, according to Rav Meir, you become a Gazlan. The moment you become a Gazlan, you're not chayav for every einus. And that was the ratio of our Mishnah, where it doesn't make any distinctions. We don't have to look if it's your negligent or not. Okay, let's just learn one more small piece over here. On the end of the Mishnah, it said, you rented a donkey and vehevrika. So then it's the bad mazel of the renter, and the one that rented it to him does not have to provide him another one. So what does this vehivrika mean? The Gemara brings two pshatim. My vehivrika, hacha over here in Bavel targimu. They translated this nahirisa. Nahirisa means literally it has very good vision, a lot of light. This is a lashon saginor. It means the opposite, that it now has compromised vision, and now it's harder to ride with this donkey. Rava says, what does this mean? Avzakis. It means that it has worms in its feet, that it now can't walk so easily. So it's still a donkey that can be used, but it's harder to use it. In such a case, he doesn't have to provide him a new donkey.
Why not worm? Because it's switched.
Huh? No, nothing to do with switch. This case has nothing to do with what it said earlier. This is a separate thing. So here the story was, there was a person that was working by the king in the palace, and he said to the people there in the palace, Avzakas v'milse de malke, that there's worms in the garments by the clothing by the king. Amrulei, they asked him, B'mai, where did you find these worms? B'tli kesef or b'tli dahav? In the silver garments or the gold garments? What this really means, according to Rashi at least, this means the garments that are made from linen, that are lighter, that are similar more to silver, or tli dav, which is wool that could be dyed, that dyed red, and therefore they're similar to gold. Where did you find the worms? So some say that this person came and accused, or he let out, he made a whole scandal. He said that it was found b'tli kesef in the linen garments. Omar, that's what he said. And then when he said this, v'katlua, they killed him because he made a whole scandal there that there's worms here, and it was turned out to be a lie because it's not. The worms usually don't come into linen garments. Others say, b'tli dav, Omar, he said that he found these worms in the wool garments. And v'shavkua, and they let him go because that it was true. It could be true what he said because that's where the worms go.
What's he meaning this story?
Not sure what it. Huh? Yeah. I guess it's just a story about the taich of the words avzikis. I'm not sure what you learn out la halacha from the story. Yeah.